building moments, that maybe that's something that they need for their model or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we well could be undergoing some kind of gestation here, and it seems like that there's even that's a common sort of trope in New Age spirituality, right? Like, this is a soul. This is like we're here to learn, and I'm always like, yeah, I think that there could be truth to that, but that also seems a little too simplistic because there's a lot of things that happen here that cause no learning. It just sucks. It's just there are things that are unfortunate, and yeah, they might build character indirectly, but that cannot be the best way to go about doing that.
And it puts us in the center of the universe once again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a whole separate topic. I don't want to lose my train of thought. Where was I going with this? I know I was headed toward some sort of like platonic point, but now I'm forgetting what it was.
A divine intervention right there, Michael.
Maybe it was.
Like being too close to the truth. Wipe this man's memory.
I'm gonna try to walk my way through it. So I was thinking about a couple of different things having to do with Plato. One thing is that there was actually this idea of what we were talking about, like code. Obviously they didn't have that language, but in probably the most difficult Platonic dialogue, which is different than all the rest of them, it's called Timaeus. This guy named Timaeus, who's supposed to be a Pythagorean sage, comes and gives a lecture to Socrates and all the students, and he gives the whole story of, God's trying to bless me, I'm going to try to tell you how we believe reality was constructed. And then it goes into this whole, harmonic, mathematical, geometric sort of story of how the divine mind created reality. And for everybody watching, this is the demiurge, but it's not the evil demiurge. The evil demiurge comes much later. So
Not to be confused with Demigorgon.
Right, yeah. I love Stranger Things. Such a fantastic show. But, so basically the demiurge is using these divine, transcendent, non-physical principles to create a work of art, more or less, using those principles. But he's aware of the fact that it will be imperfect because you're taking these non-physical things, like, where does a triangle exist? Not here, but yet it does exist in everyone's mind. So if you make even the most perfect triangle, it won't be perfect. You can get it down to like a micron of error, but there will always be an error. So there's this idea they build into this construction that they call, I think it's a non-page, and they also call the errant cause, which is basically, by virtue of doing this, it necessitates a bunch of stuff's going to go wrong, and it necessitates that you've got physical complexity of all these different parts and pieces moving around. That means they're going to break down. That means it's going to have all these other things happen downstream of it, which to us will be suffering, right? So in that way, you could conceive of something being both problematic and seeming even evil, right? Like that's why
Why would you create something just to have it be imperfect?
Right.
And painful. Yeah.
But yet it's like a natural thing, and we're doing the same thing on our level, right? Like you created all of this awesome stuff. Like we're all trying to do that, and we're all little demiurges of our own universe, and we should be. I think we should be. I think that's part of the point of being human. But in doing that, you're going to indirectly make a bunch of mistakes and make some enemies maybe, but that's not your intention, right? And I think it's probably something like that all the way up there.
Yeah. But it also, like I said, it also does kind of help. It feeds the model. Once again, like all these little errors, although you might not see how it helps you, that doesn't mean that it doesn't. You don't live for maybe as long as you need to see the result. You know what I mean? Like if you look at the tragedies that have happened over the last century, you look at the war, or so many terrible things happen to a lot of people. But if you fast forward perhaps a few hundred years from that point, and you realize that the technology that was derived from those pressure cooking moments actually ended up creating, hopefully, a more sustainable, peaceful existence on the planet, right? So that's that sort of Taoist, there is no good, there is no bad, you just don't have enough, you can't zoom out enough to see it. What was that old story of the guy, the farmer who lost his horse, and the neighbor's like, oh, that's bad. He's like, I don't know, it's good or bad. And then he wins it back because he won some lottery, and the guy goes, oh, it's good. He goes, I don't know if it's good or bad. And then his son rides the horse one day, falls off and breaks his leg. And that's bad. And he's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad. And then conscription came around because there was a war, and they couldn't draft him because he had a broken leg. And so the neighbor goes, well, that's good, and so on and so forth. It's like you don't know what's good. And so for us to say something's good or bad, I think it's irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. I think it's more of, does this help the model grow? And I think the answer is overwhelmingly yes. Even if it does seem incredibly pointless, evil, and meaningless, I think still something comes from it. Yeah. Going back to weird lore and weird overlaps between esoteric and potentially UFO stuff, there's one link that I don't hear people talking about very often, which I think is very worth exploring, which is there's this whole sect of people who are interested in the phenomenon that's like following the whole weird Nazi rabbit hole, right? Of these hyperborean beings that might be like the Nordics or whatever. Actually, that's a misnomer. I think the Hyperborean